Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman. Hi everyone, and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. I'm your host, Linz.
And I'm your host, Chris.
How is it going, Chris?
Yeah, it is pretty good. Finally, the sun has sort of come out in England. It's a rarity.
Yeah, like somehow it's hot and there's like a flaming orange circle in the sky.
Yeah, it's like a ritualistic kind of thing in England. When that happens, everyone just takes all of their clothes off immediately.
Especially builders.
And, yeah. Cracks open a beer.
Topless people in Morrison's and such.
Yeah, by about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, everyone is bright pink.
Yes. It's good though. Like, I'm not really like a super summer person, but now I really am. I've switched up. I still need about 2 tubes of like sunblock, but other than that, it's been really nice.
I love the sun, man. I'm all about it.
I do now.
Yeah, I mean, like, we had a really naff winter here.
Naff,
this year.
was it, Chris?
Yeah, just naff, man. It was just grey and dreary. Nothing happened. We didn't go like more than 3 days without a torrential downpour. Like, just bugger off.
I will say though, I know you know this already, but I don't really mind the rain. But yeah, I think the rain contributes to how pretty nature actually gets in England in like spring and summer compared to other places. Not everywhere, but it is really like beautiful when everything blooms and blossoms. But as soon as like autumn hits, it's like, God damn it.
It's great weather for the ducks, as they say, but
yes,
not so much for humans.
Oh God, we're talking about the weather and we're British. Like,
oh God damn it.
Yeah.
We've fallen into the trap.
We have?
Oh God. Okay, I'm going to go make another cup of tea and you think of something else.
Right. So you're doing good, Chris. We're both doing good.
Yes.
Good times.
You,
right.
Everything's good over there with you?
Yeah, well, let's not lie. We did have a big chat before we started this. Before we said we wouldn't, and then we had a really like in-depth chat about how we were. So now when we're asking how are you again, it's like, yes, the weather's fine.
How are you?
How are you? Yeah, but let's not drag out the intro. I think people want to get to the story.
To the meat.
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of memes recently, and I think it's sort of like a hint from the universe. It's like 20 minutes into a podcast after man talks about trip to supermarket. Anyway, let's get started.
Well, before we do jump into it, though, we should probably just thank our listeners, especially our Patreons. Thank you very much for all of your support. Do remember, if you want to show some support to us, you get some bonus episodes, some extra content. Over there, you can go to patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio. But the main place that you'll probably want to go if you want to see the images that are associated with this episode will be our Instagram account, which is at d.s.radio.
Oh, you're on it today, Chris. You are on it.
However, that's not it, is it?
d.s.radio. Didn't you say that? d.s.radio. You know what, Chris?
Yes.
I think you're developing a memory issue because there's so many episodes I've edited with you where you're like, I didn't say that. And I go back like 20 seconds and you definitely said it.
Deny.
Can't deny on DS Radio. Or should I say d.s.radio, which is the actual Instagram where you can see all the images that go along with this episode and all the previous episodes. So, Chris.
Oui?
You know what? I was thinking to myself recently that it's been a while.
I first saw you.
Thank you.
Hold your head up high. That one.
It's been a while. Okay. It's been a while since we've had a good haunting episode.
Oh.
So I got to work looking for a story and I came across this. Now, Chris, listen here, partner. I'm going to need you to put on these. Hold on. All right. Here, take them.
Oh, thank you.
Cowboy boots.
Yep.
Cowboy hat.
Yep, I'll pop that on as well. Whoa. I'm just wearing cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. Where am I going? I've got nothing else on. At least give me some assless chaps.
You don't need anything. You got the Sasquatch fur. No one can tell you're naked. The silence from Chris and the disappointment.
Just what about 5 minutes into the episode? Just over 6. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. Well, at least you got it out of the way.
Yeah, if I have to suffer during the lock forever for a newspaper article that existed that I read, you're going to suffer the Sasquatch jokes for being 6 foot and hairy. Okay, so saddle up, partner, because we are time traveling back to 1800s Arizona, and it's about
Yeeeee-haw!
to get dusty and spooky as fuck. So today we're looking at the case of the Red Ghost.
Oh.
Heard of it?
Communist ghost.
No, not the communist ghost, nor the Marvel super ape. But
This would be dead and red.
that was actually good. You're sharp for someone with zero memory. Now, to get you back for all that reading I did on the El Chupacabra episode a couple of weeks back. Notice I said a couple and not 3.
Sorry.
I have a little newspaper article here for you to read to start off our investigation. So, this is from the Mohave County Miner from February 1893.
He first appeared 10 years ago, shortly after Geronimo's disastrous raid through southern Arizona. A couple of Mexicans washing for gold on one of the creeks that run through the San Francisco River had their tent thrown over them and awoke in time to hear the tread of galloping hooves and a terrible shriek. They got clear of the wreck in time to see something taller than 2 horses tear into the brush. They told their story at Orr the next day, and people went out to investigate. They found strange tracks in the creek mud and saw where the brush had been broken down by the passage of some great beast. But the mysterious trail was soon lost among the rocky hills, and that was the last of the Red Ghost, for some days. His next appearance was many miles away at a sheep ranch on Eagle Creek. The herders were out with their flocks, and 2 women with the children were alone in the ranch house. One of them had just gone to the spring for water. The other heard the barking of the ranch dogs and got to the door in time to see something awful tear through the fence and down by the spring. She heard her sister cry out, but did not dare to go to her assistance. Instead, she kept the children indoors and barricaded the cabin until the men returned at night. When she told them, they took their guns and went to the spring. They found the woman dead, trampled and crushed, as though a troop of cavalry had run over her. When the coroner came up from Solomonville, the only witness to the apparition testified and tried to describe it. It was red, she said, and very tall, and ridden by a devil. She could give no clearer description than this. She had only seen it for an instant and then covered her face and prayed. The coroner's inquest resulted in the unusual verdict of death in some manner unknown to the jury. And when the coroner's jury went home with half an idea that one of the women had been murdered by the other, who had invented the story of the apparition, doubtless having heard of the experience of the mines on Chase's Creek. After that, innumerable stories were brought in about the mysterious phantom. One man declared that he had pursued it to the edge of one of the precipices in the county, and that the phantom never stopped but galloped straight across the valley of Black River, from one cliff to the other, 1/2 mile, as easily as if the ground had been under his hooves instead of 400 feet beneath him. The fellow was positive that the red ghost had not flown, but had simply galloped over the air. It happened that the narrator of this adventure was the same man who had told of a flying bear that he had once encountered in the Mogollons. He had also discovered a mountain of solid gold, but had been driven away from it by the Apaches and had never been able to find his way back.
Okay, Chris. Many elements to that tale, a lot to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking? We have a woman who has been stomped to death by something, and another woman is being blamed for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a split-second sighting of what one witness believes was the devil himself riding some kind of beast.
Yeah, standard stuff, really. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of your run-of-the-mill shit, isn't it? Right. So, firstly, I mean, the credibility of this witness here who had discovered a solid gold mountain, and also a flying bear. Perhaps he's not the best witness, but let's roll with this.
Well, you know, Chris, I mean, just because many people live mundane lives doesn't mean that some men don't find mountains of gold and flying bears.
Well, I wish you'd share with me where either of those things are, because I want to see them both.
Maybe not the flying bear. I'll be fine not knowing where that is.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is quite an odd tale. You might well dismiss it as, you know, something that was...
Bullshit.
Well, bullshit. You might well dismiss it as bullshit, but we do have a physical body here that has been killed.
Yes.
We do have someone who witnessed it.
Kind of.
We have the sister. I'm assuming it's the sister. I'm not sure, but the other woman who was out at the well down at the creek getting some water for her family. She was mauled, and as they say, her body looked like it had been trampled by entire cavalry.
Which is crazy when you consider that, like, the coroner attempted to blame her for that.
Yeah, but what a strange thing. I mean, as you know, in the days before reliable reporting, you know, things can be inflated. They can be hyped up a little bit. And maybe that's the case that's happening here, but still, we have a dead body of a woman, and it's unexplained what's happening. But this interesting point about this ghostly red phantom riding across a gorge, basically from one side to the other. I mean, what are we suggesting?
The devil on its back, by the way.
Right. So essentially, what we have is the devil horse riding about.
What was described?
Not that long ago, we had a devil walking up the side of people's roofs.
Yes, we did. If you guys haven't listened to that one yet, it's called The Devil's Footprints, and it was a few episodes ago now. Although there was no sighting of devil, just footprints.
True.
But here we have what was described as the devil riding on top of some kind of creature. So you're thinking devil on horseback?
Yeah, but in my head, it is a very comical devil. It's sort of like,
What about trampling a woman to death is comical to you, Chris?
Well, only if it's done by, a man in like a traditional sort of, red onesie with little horns on the top, painted his face red, growing a very bad goatee and a little Halloween pitchfork.
You know what? That's actually scared me a bit. That description you just gave. I know you were trying to be funny, but it's actually kind of a bit scary. Like, imagine a horror movie where the slasher killer is dressed up in a really cheap dollar store costume and he's like an actual murderer. Like, that's way more scary than someone who's tried to put like effort into it and is like really edgy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for scaring me, Chris. I'm currently alone.
Oh.
So you think it's funny. You don't think this could be a demonic force, some unheard of cryptid, a ghost, or like the devil himself?
There is all of those possibilities. I think that the discreditation by the newspaper has maybe popped me on the path of not believing things a little bit, but I shouldn't be swayed by journalism. I'm sure there's more evidence that you're about to share with us. Undeniable evidence of a demon devil riding a phantom.
Right. Well, Chris, I don't know where you think this is going. I know it's DSR and we do investigate the weirder side of things, but have you ever considered, Chris, that some of these weird tales may have an explanation?
You mean
a tangible, legit, historical, kind of, maybe.
A terrestrial explanation?
Well, how would you feel, Chris, if I told you that the creature responsible for this attack and murder, let's say, well, manslaughter, he didn't mean it, was a camel.
A camel?
A camel in Arizona.
American
Yeah,
West.
A camel.
Entirely localized in an area called Arizona. Traveling camel.
A traveling camel, a tourist of sorts. Yeah. Is that scoffing I hear, Chris?
No, I'm on a diet. So pray tell, how did this? Well, okay, right. My only frame of reference to this is, and spoilers for anyone who's not played the game, Red Dead Redemption 2. But there is a mission in that game where you come across a gentleman who runs a traveling circus, and one of the missions is that a bunch of the animals have got out, and it's your job to go around and catch them and bring them back. And there's some exotic animals that wouldn't normally be there during the game, primarily one of which I think you've got to capture a tiger at one point as well. So is this kind of where we're going with this? Like there's an exotic zoo that lost a camel?
Even better, Chris. So around 1848, Major Henry C. Wayne, a United States Army officer, had the idea to import camels to the U.S. War Department to replace horses on the battlefield. Now, he wasn't the only person to have this idea. The Senator of Mississippi at the time, Jefferson Davis, also backed this whole camel idea, although his plan wasn't taken seriously until his later role as Secretary of War in 1853. It's said that Davis apparently came up with this idea during the Mexican War of 1847. So basically, up until that point, the army had been transporting supplies and such using horses and carts and mules. And when it came to crossing desert land, the horses had a really hard time. They got exhausted easily, they needed more breaks and more water, and etc. So David was like, camels? Why not use camels? They're built for the environment, they're tough, they can store energy more sufficiently and eat some of the plants found in the arid Arizona landscapes. They're faster over longer distances, and they can carry more, at least in the desert anyways, compared to horses. So a couple of years of pushing camels on the War Department later, Davis was finally granted $30,000 for his mission, which today is around $980,000. So he got this to fund his camel vision.
Wow.
Imagine.
I mean, today you can't even get a pothole fixed, but back then, at nearly $1 million worth of camels just kicking around.
Yep. So his dream of using camels for military transportation was now a reality. In the summer of 1855, he managed to get his hands on 33 of them from various countries around the globe. So Major Henry C. Wayne and Lieutenant David Dixon Porter were assigned this task, and they promptly boarded the USS Supply to gather some humpy fellas for an all-expenses-paid cruise to the US of A. Well, I suppose it was like a work trip, really, for the camels. So he grabbed an assortment of camels from Greece, Turkey, Egypt, Tunisia, Malta, and the total itinerary was comprised of 14 males and 19 females, both of the one-humped and two-humped varieties.
I thought there was a lot of humping going on with that combination.
There was some humping, but we'll get to that later. So, I don't know how much you know about camels, Chris. Spit some camel facts that you know right now.
Well, they spit, don't they?
I think so. Llamas, camel. All the long neck boys tend to spit at you.
They all go huck tui. So what? Right, my camel knowledge. So, like as you said,
have you seen a camel in real life?
I have.
I think I have, but I might have been like 8.
I'm sure that's someone like a school zoo trip or something.
Mm.
So they're pretty tall.
Yep.
They don't suffer fools gladly.
That's true.
You probably shouldn't stand behind them. As you say, there's one-humped and two-humped varieties. I do not know what causes that. Are they different species? I'm not sure. You tell me. They supposedly store water in their humps, but I do believe that's.
I think that's a myth.
Kind of bullshit. Yeah. What else? They live in hot desert climates. I tend to think of like the Middle East when I think of them. When you said Greece, I was like, oh, they have camels in Greece. I did not realize that. I mean, I've been to Greece, didn't see any camels.
To be honest, they have them in Arizona.
Well, they do now. I don't know if there's like, are you telling me that is there wild packs of camels in Arizona?
I mean, probably now. Well, probably then. I don't know about now. Maybe the odd one, the odd survivor. So I'll help you out here, Chris.
Okay.
The two humps are called Bactrian or Mongolian camels, and they're good in like colder climates. And the single hump ones, which are the ones that we think of, are called dromedary or Arabian camels, and they're good in hot and arid land. So Wayne got a couple of Bactrians and majority dromedary camels. He was also able to get his hands on a rarer Pokemon, an F1 hybrid camel, which is a cross between a male Bactrian...
A racing car.
which is a cross between a male Bactrian and a female dromedary.
Ooh.
The F1s usually come out larger than both the single and the double humpers. They end up with one big, massive single hump, and they're bred for working and sometimes camel wrestling, which I feel like you would be a fan of, Chris.
I don't know. I'd give it a go.
What, wrestling a camel or watching two camels wrestling?
Oh, I was getting ready to chin a camel, if I'm honest.
Just a camel in Speedos. What would your outfit be to chin a camel in a wrestling competition?
I
see you as an ultimate warrior type character, but I'm sure you don't see yourself as one. And you're probably going to say something completely different.
I think you've got to think about this strategically, right? I think if you were dressed like the ultimate warrior, quite famously, he's got lots of tassels and fringing. I think,
Oh, they'd love that, wouldn't they?
The camels
would be
be
bad
nipping
for you.
them. They'd be getting them all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to be wearing like Speedo and just like
greased up in Speedos.
Grease yourself up. Maybe a bit of war paint. What do camels hate? What's a natural enemy of the camel?
That's a good question. I don't think there is one.
Right, so they live in the
man, maybe just you yourself.
They live in the desert. So what else is in the desert? Scorpions.
You could be scorpion,
yeah.
And you could have like, instead of tassels on the arms, you could have just like a long coat that went to a point and trailed on the floor, and then you could do like some kind of flip and be like scorpion tail and slap it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I could do.
I wouldn't, but I could.
I wouldn't, but I could do. Apparently, according to this, natural predators of camels are hyenas, jackals, wolves, which obviously all of these guys are playing unfair, and they are hunting in packs.
Oh, the jackal. That would be good.
And also bears.
Oh my god, yeah, you could be the bear. No, because then there's Bear Grylls. You probably have issues with the name, copyright.
Linz, if I'm wearing a Speedo, greasing myself up and calling myself the bear, I ain't hunting camels.
You're an ally.
Well, that I am.
Aren't we all? Right, so luckily for you, Chris, you don't have to wrestle no humpy boy. Camel wrestling consists of two male camels wrestling for the ultimate hump, or deciding on who gets to mate with the female. Which I suppose isn't too different from past WWE storylines.
No.
Also, fun fact, you can hybridize the shit out of F1 camels and make like super camels that are faster, they can walk on ice and whatnot. Anyways, back to the story. So, this could be a whole other episode, but let's continue. So along with this herd of newly acquired camels, he also got saddles and covers since they weren't yet available in the US stores. And since the Americans were more familiar with horses, they also needed a few camel drivers. So they offered jobs to a handful of men who agreed to come over to the US and do their thing. By 1856, they were all back on the USS Supply and on their way to Texas. Wayne did his best to make sure the camels were cared for during this long trip, and although they managed to produce a couple of calves during the voyage, they did lose an adult from the herd. Under Wayne's orders and care, the camels had actually improved in health during the crossing, so he did a pretty good job of caring for them. And apparently, like, during the original, like, bartering to buy camels, they got, like, sold a load of sick ones. They kind of got scammed. Like, people saw them coming a mile away and they were like, yeah, take this camel. And it was, like, sick. It probably wouldn't have made the journey. They just had a really hard time, but they did manage to get, like, a good group of them to bring back. And apparently, I also read, I'm not sure if this is true, but I read that camel sellers, in order to make their camels look more healthy, they would puncture the hump and, like, blow air into it to inflate it.
Oh, no, that's not.
Which is really awful. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I read. I only read it from one source.
My humps, my humps, my humps, my humps, my humps. Blow them up.
What was that song?
Oh.
Can you do a rendition of it that we can put at the end of the episode?
Nobody wants to hear me do that.
Everybody wants to hear that. You don't understand how the listeners work, especially the Patreons. They had us read, like, only Finn's smut.
What is it? Oh, no, I fucked it up.
Spending all your money on me. I think that's actually about the Arizona camels.
What you gonna do with all them humps in Arizona?
I'm gonna make you carry stuff through Arizona. All right. So, around 3 months later, they were all finally back in Texas. 3 months. Fuck that.
All my camels live in Texas.
I honestly could not tolerate a 3-month expedition to get camels. Like, I went to Amsterdam on the ferry once and France, and it was like I just wanted to die. It was like the worst time. Apparently the camels didn't like their travel by ship either. They were like puking and freaking out, and I feel so bad for them. So on his return, Lieutenant Porter was turned back around, shoved onto yet another trip to Egypt, where he was told to fetch even more camels to bring back.
Wow.
As Porter set sail in search of more camels, Wayne marched the first batch to CampVerde, Texas. Verde came to be known as the Camel Station. After the first and second expedition to obtain camels, they ended up with around 70. The military were soon able to see how well adapted the camels were during the construction of a wagon road between Mexico and California. The camels carried supplies, including water for the mules, who struggled way more than the camels at every point. The camels could also walk over rough terrain with jagged sharp rocks, as well as up mountains and through rivers, all without fear or injury. They were better than the horses and the mules on basically all fronts. Like, the horses were usually scared to walk through rivers. They get washed away. They wouldn't want to do it. The camels were like, whatever, splash, splash, splash. They just walk through, get to the other side. They had like zero fear of anything, and nothing really seemed to injure them in that environment, unlike the horses. It was all going well, actually, the whole camel thing. That is until the Civil War. This basically ended the entire experiment. Soldiers who came to CampVerde weren't used to camels. They were used to horses who could follow more instructions. They weren't as prickly as the camels. They didn't resist a lot. Because male camels, like when they were in like a mating period, they'd just be kind of wild. So the soldiers didn't know how to approach the camels. They didn't know the way to treat them and to get them to do what they wanted. And they actually came to hate them and reportedly mistreat them as a result, which is really sad. I know, because the camels, they came so far and they were doing so well. Poor camels. I don't like this part of the story.
Gone so far and tried so hard.
That's so inappropriate, Chris.
This is a singy episode today.
I know, but people like that, especially Septembrio.
I'm going to expose myself as not being able to sing soon.
You can sing. Okay, so by 1869, the camp and Operation Camel was no more. The majority of the animals were sold off. Some may have ended up in New York for tourists to marvel over and take pictures with. Legend has it that some of the camels were let go and charged off into the desert to survive on their own. The fort was eventually abandoned in 1869. So, Chris, we may have explained that a camel was responsible or could have been responsible for the red ghost sightings
Oh, yeah.
of 1883.
I totally forgot about this. That we were talking about this.
Yeah, so the red ghost. The sightings could be explained, it was a camel, and a camel that was let go during the Civil War. But what about the devilish rider on the back?
Could they be the humps?
Well,
From a distance?
let's turn back to... Well, do you want to have a guess first? What? Yeah, actually have a guess, knowing what you know. It could well be a camel that people are seeing, and... there was camels, so that probably explains it. They said it was a red animal. I guess they are. The single hump camels are kind of red in colour, and when they've been in the desert for that long, they probably pick up a lot of dust and sand. So that explains the camel part. And they very well could have trampled a woman. They're way bigger than horses. It would kill you to get trampled by a big camel that was scared and a bit wild. But what about this devilish rider on the camel's back? What do you think? I mean, first of all, red ghost. Is the camel living? Is it alive? Is it unexpected and so people just associate it with some demonic entity or force?
I mean, you've got to think back then, your average person wouldn't have been exposed to a camel, wouldn't really know what they are. So
You should never expose yourself to a camel, especially during a camel wrestling.
exactly.
But everyone has a slip when they're greased up, you know.
But I mean, yeah, if it's an unusual animal, non-native fauna released into an environment, then yeah, you could totally see how from a distance somebody would think, what is that? It kind of looks like a horse, but what's that on its
But it's
back?
gigantic.
It's huge. What's it got on there? And you could mistake the humps for a person or a devil from a distance. Especially.
So you think that the hump was what they mistook this devil rider
Well,
for?
I think either it's a hump that did it, or somebody was riding the camel. Either it's it was one of the men from this caravan that was trying to take these camels across the country, and perhaps one of them got out of control and they were ended up trampling over a woman, or I don't know, maybe they also had some other exotic creatures with them, and there was a monkey who decided to ride on the back of the camel.
A really big monkey.
A gorilla.
A gorilla on a camel. Oh, God, imagine that. All right, well, Chris, we will turn to the article to see what happened. I mean, we don't know exactly, but the article illustrates the theories and some other sightings, so we can figure this out.
It was probably a month before any reliable information about the mystery was received. It came from Salt River country. Cy Hamlin, a hunter, coming suddenly to the top of a ridge, saw across the next ravine a large animal moving through the chaparral. It was half a mile away from him, but presently it came to be a burnt patch where he could see it plainly, and he recognized it as a camel. There are camels in Arizona, descendants of the bunch turned loose by the government after an unsuccessful attempt to use them for carrying soldiers' supplies across the desert. But this particular camel was more than a simple ship of the desert. The hunter could see plainly upon its back a burden. He did not have long to study the phenomenon, for the camel soon reached the edge of the clearing and disappeared in the timber. Cy said the burden on the camel's back looked to him like a man, but he wasn't sure, and there was a general idea that Cy was lying until a report came from the valley of the Verde that the camel had been seen there. By this time, everybody in the territory had heard of it, of course. Fantasia Colorado, the Mexicans called it, and the translated name hung to it. It was a splendid name to scare tenderfoots with. The prospectors on the Verde got a shot at it. They saw it in the early morning feeding on a mesa and crept up within shooting distance. They fired together. Though both were good marksmen, they failed to bring the camel down. It jumped into the air at the reports and tore off down the hill. As it jumped, something fell from it, and the prospectors, who followed after, found a man's head dry and withered, but with flesh and hair still on it. No one saw the uncanny beast for some weeks after this, but finally it appeared to the northward. One of the cowboys rode up about dusk to an abandoned branding corral. There was something in the corral, and as he came up, a great red camel burst out of the corral. Through force of habit, the cowboy's riata was out, and he lassoed the beast. In about 2 minutes, he wished that he hadn't. The camel charged at him, and his horse, which, while it knew all about steers, was unversed in the ways of camels. When the horse tried to rear up and pirouette so the charging beast would pass by, as anything in the cow line would have done, he was caught by the camel on the throat, and the camel and man and horse went down together. The camel did not stay to fight, but went off as hard as he could pelt, dragging 60 feet of good rawhide riata after him. When the cowboy got to camp, he explained a good deal of the mystery of the red ghost. The pack on its back was nearly gone, he said. There was no question it had once been a man. It was the last of the red ghost in a supernatural capacity. He was probably seen many times, but the pack being gone from his back, there was nothing to distinguish him from the other camels. And gradually the red ghost, from being a terror, degenerated into a story and then into a tradition. A couple of months ago, however, Mizu Hastings, who has a ranch a little above the Gola camp on the San Francisco, woke up one morning and saw through the window of his cabin a big red camel banqueting in his turnip patch. Mizu took a dead rest over the windowsill and blazed away. 4:20. He got the camel. When he went out to examine the beast, then he found him covered with a perfect network of knotted rawhide strips. They had been on him so long that some of the strands had cut their way into the flesh. The camel was all scarred up and had evidently had a very hard time. Now everybody down in that country is wondering whether the man was tied on there Mizapa fashion for deviltry or revenge, whether it was some lunatic's hideous scheme of suicide or merely an ugly piece of humour of somebody who had a camel and a corpse for which he had no use.
Wow.
Wow. So this was a rampaging camel with a corpse lashed to him. Huh.
Potentially. Holy shit. Yeah, so there's... some people call it folklore. Some people think it's a genuine theory. But if this is the case, why is a absolute mystery. So they're saying this camel at some point had a man on its back where they obviously tethered to the camel, right? From my understanding of the way the article was written. So they said, what was it? That it was either some strange form of suicide, a joke of people who had of someone who had a corpse in a camel, which what kind of psychopath do you have to be to do something like that? Or maybe some Mazeppa style revenge. I don't know much about the whole Mazeppa thing. I know it's like a Lord Byron poem about some guy who was like royalty. It might have been Ukrainian, I don't know, but like I think he cheated with someone from another, like a woman from another family, and as revenge they like stripped him naked and tied him to a horse and like sent him off. So I guess they're saying it was like some kind of revenge, it was some horrible morbid joke, or it was just some unlucky guy who died on a camel. I don't know, maybe he got shot, you know, but he was tethered to it, so obviously someone has tied him to it, or he's tied himself to it. But yes, Chris, apparently the devil on top of the wild rampaging camel was probably the corpse of a man that was drying out in the sun.
Well, that would explain it. Yes, you've got, somebody, a corpse after being in the sun outside exposed to the elements for that long pretty much would have turned to leather binding a skeleton. So yeah, you can see how somebody might think that this was a devil rider.
I mean, it killed the woman probably out of fear, like maybe it was shocked and it just, you know, like one guy described it attacking him and his horse and then running away. Maybe that's the camel way of going, oh my god, I'm scared. Attacks the thing, tramples it and leaves. So maybe it was just a really unfortunate set of circumstances. I mean, we've talked a lot about cryptids on this podcast, and we've done so much mental gymnastics trying to explain away these insane, vivid sightings of unknown creatures and aliens and ghosts or whatever. And I think that this story is actually a great example of people believing there's like some kind of demonic entity or whatever galloping across the landscape, only to discover it's something very real and frankly a combination of like morbid elements that no one would ever just come up with on the top of their head as like an explanation. So it really makes me think that, like, you know, these alien sightings, these cryptid sightings, like, for example, the Dover demon. Like, when you think of that, a little guy with a big head on a wall clinging on, we're all like, oh, it's a demon, it's an alien, stuff like that. It's like, maybe it's just something we haven't thought of because it's so unlikely and such a strange combination of things that we'd never come up with it. Like, this red ghost story really makes me kind of question all the other things we've covered.
I mean, possibly, but I don't think that we can just, just use one brush and tar all of them, saying that they're camels.
Of course not. No, but it's food for
This is
thought,
the first time on the
like-
podcast that I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, diehard listeners, but this is the first time that camel theories come up. So if you're trying to tell me that when poor old Bob was out there up in Scotland and he was getting attacked by two alien balls, that actually he'd mistaken them for two camels.
No, I'm not saying everything's camels. I'm saying that
Camels all the way down.
I'm saying that a corpse on a camel is sort of something that you would not come up with as an explanation off the top of your head. Therefore, all these other cases could just be a combination of some really weird elements that no one would ever put together because you would never bother to think about it. You must know what I'm trying. I'm not saying everything's camels, Chris. Stop it. You're doing a drain the log again.
No. Well, I mean, maybe we should do. Maybe we'll find camels down there.
Fuck you.
No, you do bring up a very valid point. Maybe we are a bit too quick to want to believe, whereas sometimes there might be a completely ridiculous, if rational, explanation.
Yes. But yeah.
Well,
that's pretty much the story of the red ghost and possible, very likely explanation, Chris.
Well, it's certainly very, very interesting to hear these type of stories. I'd never heard of the red ghost before. I think there's probably thousands of these stories, these Western kind of stories, ghost stories. There's probably thousands of them, and all over the place. I mean, just ask Big Nose George. I'm sure he would have had plenty of these stories to tell. His schnoz won't lie. But
if only he had a camel as like a sidekick.
Well, he wouldn't have been hung from the tree, would he? If he had a camel, he would.
Camel could have run up.
Would have run up, and he would have just dropped down on it and gone. Oh. And then we need a close up of him going. Oh, and then he would have ridden off. Perhaps he would have landed on it backwards as well. But
trampled a poor lady somewhere.
But these type of stories litter the world, not just the US. I mean, over here, how many stories have you heard of grey ladies haunting places? What is it that people seeing? Is it the fact that they're really seeing a ghost, or was it that there was a draft and it blew some lacy curtains in the wrong direction? Or, as you say, was there a camel there? We will never know. Ectoplasm, is it just camel spit?
I guess it's similar to alien big cats in England. Just something exotic that was set free, and then people were just sighting them.
Sorry, I was like, did we cut the big cats up? We did a chupacabra. It wasn't really an animal, it was an alien dog. I don't remember alien big cats. But now I understand.
I'd love to do the alien big cats episode. That would be great.
Like the Beast of Bodmin Moor and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Animals that are released out into the wild, and then every so often there'll be a story in the British press about a lion or a puma stalking the Blythe.
Well, maybe. I hope so.
Well, thank you very much for telling us all this very, very unusual and obscure story, Linz. Do you have any closing thoughts on this?
No, just that I would like to apply camel theory to so many past episodes. And I'd also like to see you greased up in Speedos and wrestling a camel. Do with that what you will, listeners.
I mean, Patreon only.
The rumours are spreading.
Well, yes, let's find out. But next time we are going to be diving in to a very different story. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. You're going to have to wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Exactly 2 weeks
okay.
For that. But let's just say you will have heard of this one. You will have heard of this one, but you may find out some things about this story that you never did before.
Oh, can't wait. Well, thanks very much, Chris, for joining me on this camel adventure.
You're very welcome. I'm glad he didn't get the hump with me.
God. Low-hanging fruit. All right, thanks for listening, everyone, and we will see you in the next one.
Take care, everybody. Bye.